very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain. But once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man during that whole week before I killed him. Every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then when I made an opening sufficient for my head, I thrust it in. Oh, how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I may not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me. For he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh no, it was the low stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night just at midnight, when all the world slept, it had welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo. The terrors that distracted me, I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. It was open, wide, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all of a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it, that it chilled the very marrow in my bones, but I could see nothing else of the old man's. Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. It grew quicker and quicker, louder and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say louder every moment. Do you mark me well? Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder and louder. I thought the heart must burst. The old man's hour had come. I leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. imagine you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. Ha ha. At the end of my labors it was 4 o'clock, and a bell sounded. I went down to open it. Detectives. Someone had heard a knock, a shriek in the night, and they'd come to investigate. I smiled. What had I to fear? I bade them welcome. The cry had been my own in a dream, I said. I told them the old man was away in the country and showed them his undisturbed chamber. In my confidence, I invited them to sit and rest themselves. I placed my own chair in the very spot where I had concealed the victim. The officer, satisfied, chatted about familiar things. But soon I wished them gone. A muffled sound came to my ears. It was a low, dull beating, growing steadily louder. I spoke faster, turning pale, gasping for breath. Still the beating increased, louder, louder. How could they not hear it? Could it be that they did hear, they suspected, they knew? They were mocking my horror. I could bear their smiles no longer. Louder, louder, it was intolerable. I felt I must scream or die. Villains! I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here! It is the beating of his hideous heart!